Delegates, I now call on the General Secretary, Patricia King, to introduce the principal report, reference Section 2, Living Wage, Strong Economy, Section 3, Creating Jobs, Achieving Growth, and Section 4, Progressive Workplaces. General Secretary, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, President and delegates. The theme of this conference is challenging inequality through wage-led growth, which, given the particular circumstances of the economies on this island over the past 5 to 6 years, is very appropriate. Delegates, income inequality is a complex topic, and the solutions cannot be reduced to a single answer. We know that growing income disparities are part of a global trend. And we know that for decades, this island of Ireland has been subjected to a neoliberal economics system dominant in the English-speaking world, the most prominent exponents of which were people like Reagan and Thatcher. And we know that the main policies of this dogma were to promote free trade, cut public spending, eliminate regulation, encourage wealth creators, and reduce the role of trade unions and collective bargaining, all of which have, over those years, caused considerable hardship and damage to the lives of workers and their families. You only have to consider the circumstances in Greece today to appreciate how far they will go to pursue this dogma without much regard to the deprivation to be visited on the ordinary people of that country. Delegates, inequality isn't the price to be paid for rising prosperity. Inequality makes rising prosperity possible. It is the engine driving this economic philosophy. What does a properly functioning economy mean? Well, it means that citizens who need a home can access one affordably. Everyone who needs a healthcare system and healthcare can receive it through a universal system rather than a dual system which is solely based on how much wealth you own. It's the availability of quality childcare at reasonable rates rather than the exorbitant sums currently required. And it is an economy where people are not afraid to grow old, but are assured of adequate income and care in their elder years. Creating decent jobs with decent incomes is essential to reducing economic inequality. We need major changes in economic and social policy, north and south, to arrest the rise in income inequality. Let me just outline a few facts in relation to pay on this island. Alongside the Troubles premium, as we heard yesterday, Northern Ireland has the highest percentage of those earning low pay in the entire UK. The Low Pay Commission in the UK note that just under 10% of workers earn the national minimum wage, and Oxfam estimate that 232,000 people in the region are living in absolute poverty. In the Republic, TASC have highlighted that 50% of all workers earn less than 28,000 per annum, and 2/3 earn 35,000 or less. And Nevin tells us that the adjusted wage share of GDP in Ireland has declined from 54% in 1996 to 50% in 2014. The decline being more pronounced here than in other European countries. And when we look at the indicators in relation to increased profits, most recent revenue figures show a 35.5% increase year on year in corporate tax receipts, notwithstanding the profits shifting policies exercised by some of these companies. Colleagues, the national minimum wage rate of $8.65, which applies to 70,000 workers, the majority of whom are women, leaves them unable to meet the minimum essential standard of living, which the Vincentians and Nevin, among others, determine should be at £11.45 per hour for a living wage. Over a quarter of workers earn less than that living wage, well above the average in Europe, and leaving us with about 345,000 people who can be regarded as the working poor. There are strong economic advantages to the implementation of a living wage, which would create the virtuous circle effect, increasing domestic demand, leading to higher tax revenue, growth in economic performance, which in turn would create employment and raise living standards. The employer response, while somewhat predictable, is pretty deplorable. As set out in their submissions to the Low Pay Commission, I'd summarise them as follows. They say there's no justification for an increase to the national minimum wage at this time, and this is despite the fact that several global companies who are recording large profits operate in the hospitality sector and refuse to pay anything over the national minimum wage. They argue that the labour market remains weak and any increase would prompt pay pressure across the economy, and that the national minimum wage is high by international standards. They believe that there is no cost of living imperative to raise the rate, and from their point of view, the currency rate difference now is irrelevant. And they are completely dismissive of a living wage. This position strongly contrasts with the fact that according to the top world database, the top 1% of people in Ireland take more than 10% of all income. And while that's lower than the UK and the US, it is much higher than our neighbours across Europe. And I think it's also worth noting that the top 10% in Ireland receive 34% of all income today, compared to 27% in the 1970s. On the matter of hours of work, UK legislation currently provides for zero-hour contracts. And in the South, we have witnessed the widespread abuse of flexible hours contracts in areas such as education, health, hospitality and retail, where employers manipulate flexibilities and rosters, which means workers are left with no certainty of income or reliable hours work patterns. Seamus Dooley was recently quoted in the Irish Times survey as saying, "Atypical work has become typical." We need no better evidence than the Dunnes Stores dispute to demonstrate how employers and how low employers will stoop to drive their own profiteering agenda on the backs of workers. And we salute those Dunnes Stores workers who are braver than we can imagine, some even losing their livelihood. Some of those workers even lost their livelihood as punishment for putting up a fight for fair treatment in their workplace. On the question of public procurement, several motions included in this section of conference agenda refer to the precarious and unstable forms of work currently applying in the construction sector. This movement has consistently campaigned to have effective public procurement rules which would ensure that public contracts were not used as a vehicle for a race to the bottom. Considerable work has been done on this over successive public service agreements, culminating in the very strong provisions set out in the Lansdowne House proposals. However, the use of bogus self-employment methods, which seem to be supported by the Revenue Commissioners, need to be abolished immediately. In Northern Ireland, one of the biggest challenges facing public sector workers, as we heard in the debate yesterday, is the current proposition to downsize the service by 20,000 people. And there is no indication that this will exclude compulsory redundancies. And have no doubt, this proposition will have profound public procurement consequences and major implications for those workers. Delegates, we have spent a lot of time in this movement, analysing the difficulties and the challenges that face workers. And while such analysis plays a useful role, we can't keep contemplating our position. We have to look beyond that picture and recognise that we in the trade union movement are the only group with the capacity to change the current order. That is why, a short few months ago, we decided to develop a Congress Charter for Fair Conditions at Work across our island, which outlines the topics I have referred to and have outlined also includes trade union representation and ethics at work. From the outset, we have, over recent weeks, targeted each parliamentary member individually, requesting them to sign up and support our campaign. Our team has held 125 face-to-face meetings with politicians, north and south, and the results so far look like this. And you can see there, in the Republic of Ireland, Labour, Sinn Féin, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. And if we go on, we will see the Technical Group, Renua, the Socialist Party and Independents and others. And then if we look at the next, we will see in Northern Ireland, again, 3 political parties there and their view on it. And then if we go on, we will see all of the other political parties and their views. And what you will immediately observe is actually there is no fundamental difference within the left on the Congress principles for workers' rights. And how do we know that? We know it because we went out and we asked them to sign up to support our charter, and they did, all of them on the left. Congress has begun a national conversation on the fundamental rights of workers. It's our intention to follow our parliamentary engagements and arrange a similar process in local authorities, extend it to the NGOs, faith groups, big business and their representatives. And the purpose of this work is that the trade union movement in Ireland is engaging all strands of our society in a debate on the necessity for decent work and fair employment conditions to deliver the consequent dilution of the forces of inequality. Delegates, our capacity to influence change in the current order will, in my opinion, be greatly enhanced by the pending legislation currently progressing through the Oireachtas. And it is worth noting that we are the only country in Europe and beyond who are embarking on this particular quest. The foresight and origin of this goes way back to 2001, and indeed when my own previous colleague Jack O'Connor was President of Congress, with all the tenacity and energy that he could muster. He manoeuvred this through various stages, including the amendment in 2004 and the subsequent decimation by the Supreme Court in the Ryanair case and its forcible inclusion in the programme for government in 2009. And I know this because I shared most of that journey with him. And following the McGowan judgment, the restoration of the REAs and the introduction of the sector employment orders position us to achieve decent rates of pay where we are substantially representative of a class, type or group of workers in a particular sector. That is something that has evaded us for many, many years. And now that we are on the cusp of this achievement, it behoves every trade union representative to embrace the value of these mechanisms. Stop navel-gazing. Stop inter-union squabbling. Deliver the value of the trade union organisation to all workers suffering from the curse of inequality. Our job, colleagues, is to ensure that our legacy is not that we wasted these tools, but that we organised the unorganised. That is why we have to reshape our structure, faithful to the recommendations of the Trade Union Commission report. including the establishment of a workers' college, a trade union centre in every town, and the development of an effective centralised media platform. Our movement is built on the principle of solidarity. We are not one of fragmented, insular interests. Teachers do care if restaurant workers are badly treated. Local authority and civil servants workers do care if retail workers are being exploited. Every day, healthcare workers and emergency personnel go to work and care about people. The greatest friend inequality and those who perpetrate it have is weak trade union organisation. They have tried hard to mediate a narrative of our weakness. But we know that we continue to be a powerful force across this island. Knowing that fact, we should also recognise that we have the key to unlock the equality lever. And the real people who run this country, north and south, the rich and the powerful, they also know that. That is why they work day and night by various means to obstruct our progress. What better example, delegates, could you have than the recent behaviour of the corporate thugs who call themselves directors in the Clearys episode? And those thugs, they connived in secret. They connived in secret to perform company law gymnastics for the sole purpose of fleeing from their obligations to their workers who had given decades of loyal service. The American brothers, they ran back to the US with their pockets full of €19 million. And the new owners, fellow Irish citizens no less, await the largesse from a property development in Dublin city centre, which no doubt they will expect will return in bucket loads to them. Meanwhile, they abandoned their workers. They left them to salvage statutory redundancy payments through the insolvency fund, which is funded by the taxpayers, and suffer the great indignity and disrespect that goes with that appalling behaviour. Minister Nash worked hard with us to engage this employer, and Congress requested and got a meeting with Minister Bruton, and that happened on Monday morning. And what we asked him and actually demanded of him was that he make the necessary amendments to the Employment Protection Act 1977 and provide that company directors who do not comply with the terms of that law should be disqualified from acting as directors for a considerable period. Delegates, we have an important job to do, and although we haven't achieved all that we need to in terms of trade union representation, we have an increased legislative capacity to do it. My message to you is, let us go out to the building sites and organise together. Let us build a strategy in sectors such as hospitality and finance to maximise the value of our collective worker voice. Let all strands of this movement, regardless of profession, see it as a key role to convince unorganised workers, particularly young workers, that the route to their economic progress lies in organised labour. Let us commit to assist in the innovative Cork and soon-to-be launched Belfast organising projects, which will create a positive momentum in our organising strategy. Despite, delegates, the obstacles and challenges which the movement faces, we have a vision of a just and fair society, which we inherited from our founders, who fought so hard and made such sacrifices. Yesterday, we remembered the greatest socialist the island has ever had, James Connolly. He paid the ultimate price with his life. Compared to his, our task is simple, so let's go out and do it. Thanks very much.